He gives me creepy, unsafe vibes. He always watches me and won't go away. My stepdaughter falsely claimed, and my wife took her side, saying, "You need to move out." So I silently crushed their future and finances with 17 years of proof. I'll never forget the sound. Not the yelling, not the slamming doors, just the quiet, almost polite rattle of blood pressure pills rolling like little plastic lies on the polished wood. My wife stood there, arms crossed, her voice eerily calm, the same tone she used to ask me to fix a porch light or pick up her dry cleaning. "I think you should leave," she said. But this time, she didn't mean the store. She meant everything. Our home, our life, us. Behind her, her daughter, Myra, stood rigid. I used to see her every Christmas. Spoiled, yes, a little smug, but manageable. This wasn't that. This was different. No gloating, no triumph. Just waiting. Her eyes were cold. "What?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, as if repeating it slower could somehow soften the blow. My wife's jaw tensed. She still wouldn't look at me. "That you watch her. That you make her feel weird. You hover around me, Alan." Hover. The word hung in the air, thick and sickening. My blood ran cold. What does that even mean? "She feels unsafe, Alan. Unsafe." That word. It landed like a gunshot in a silent church. Unsafe. Not uncomfortable. Not annoyed. Unsafe. It's the kind of word that turns neighbors into strangers and husbands into suspects. And it didn't matter that it wasn't true. It only mattered that she believed it. There was no chance to explain. No real accusation. Just an insinuation wrapped in just enough suggestion to ruin everything. I looked at Myra. She didn't flinch. Just blinked slowly, like she knew exactly what was about to happen and had rehearsed her part. "I'll go," I said. You'd think a man would fight, yell, plead. But something in me, something ancient and bone-tired, just shut down, like a valve closing. I grabbed my keys, my half-pack bag, and walked out the front door. No one asked where I'd sleep. No one asked if I had enough for a hotel. No one cared. That night, I sat in my truck, engine off, staring at the dashboard as if it owed me answers. 17 years. I'd been her stepfather for 17 years. I paid for braces, school, a car. I taught her to parallel park. For God's sake. I cheered when she graduated. I clapped when she got into her master's program, even though I knew she'd touched up her essays with AI. All of it. Gone. Just like that. One sentence. One look. He makes me feel weird. It hit me then. A crushing weight. You don't need to be guilty to be discarded. You just need to be an inconvenience. If that resonates with you, if you've ever watched years of sacrifice vanish in the space between someone else's words, please consider subscribing. It really helps us keep telling these stories. I checked into a roadside motel. Buzzing lights. Thin towels. I didn't sleep. Not because of the situation, but because I couldn't stop thinking about the silence. No screaming match. No bombshell text revealing betrayal. Just a quiet eviction from the life I helped build. Without due process. I thought about calling a friend, but I couldn't. Not because I didn't have anyone, but because I couldn't stomach the words I'd have to say. She thinks I'm creepy. Her daughter lied. How do you say that without sounding exactly like what you're being accused of? Instead, I sat on that bed, fully dressed, watching the tacky ceiling fan spin like time going down a drain. And I realized something. Something I probably should have seen a long time ago. They didn't want the truth. They just wanted me gone. So, I started writing. Not some dramatic manifesto. Not a sad, self-pitying journal. A list. Names. 3 of them. Not therapists. Not friends. An accountant. A lawyer. An investigator. And under them, 2 words. All caps. Phase 1. When Myra was 10, she used to sneak into the garage while I was fixing the lawnmower. She'd sit on the concrete in her little rubber sandals and ask things like, "Why do spark plugs smell weird?" I answered every question, even the silly ones, even the ones she already knew, just for the attention. I bought her first camera. I co-signed her first apartment lease. I was the one who waited 4 hours outside her college dorm after she called, subbing because her roommate had moved out and left a mess. I cleaned it myself while she cried into her weighted blanket. 17 years of that. Not biological. No. But I was there. Present. Steady. Foolish. Maybe, for thinking that counted for something. I was the one who stayed up late editing her college essays while she was out partying. I was the one who knew how much was left on her student loans even when she didn't. I even took out a second mortgage on our house so she could afford that unpaid internship in Manhattan, the one she bragged about for months, with its networking dinners and $20 salads. That internship paid for itself. I paid in silence. No fanfare. And now? Now I was a shadow cast too long in her direction. A face that lingered too long in the hallway. A stepfather who hovered. Funny, I used to believe that history mattered. I sat at the flimsy motel desk, lit by a flickering sconce that buzzed louder than the air conditioner. On the notepad I'd bought from the corner gas station, I wrote the names in clean block letters. Bricks, my accountant. Retired Marine. Eyes like steel, memory like a trap. Carla, my lawyer, smart, surgical. She once told me, emotion ruins precision. You want to win. Be cold. Marcus, my private investigator. Soft-spoken, former compliance auditor. He likes to start small and dig quietly. Below it, in all caps, Phase 1. I didn't need revenge. Not yet. I needed protection. The first step was financial. Isolate assets. The second, gather records. Everything. Bank statements, tax files, every tuition receipt, every email I'd sent her with an attached invoice, the digital fingerprints of 17 years of contribution. I remembered one Christmas, maybe 5 years ago. She hadn't gotten into her dream college, and she was spiraling, locked herself in her room, wouldn't talk to anyone except me. She handed me her phone one night and said, "Can you fix it?" She meant her essay, her whole application. I rewrote it from scratch while she slept off a panic attack. She got in. She never thanked me. That version of the essay is still saved on my external hard drive. Metadata included. Just like the email she sent me a month ago asking if I could help a little bit with the security deposit on her new apartment, which I did. And just like the sarcastic voice memo she once sent her friend, where she joked, "Alan is basically my wallet with legs." That voice memo she accidentally left in a shared cloud folder that she forgot I had access to. People think the past is buried. It's not. It's dated, backed up, catalogued. History doesn't fade. It just waits to be pulled from the drawer. And that's what I was doing now. Not reacting. Not grieving. Preparing. Let her think she won. Let them laugh at brunch about how weird I'd become. Let my wife tell her sisters that I was gone. None of that mattered. I wasn't mourning. I was moving. The motel Wi-Fi was terrible. I didn't care. I tethered a portable hotspot, logged into my cloud drive, and started compiling, cross-referencing, categorizing. I wanted everything in chronological order. Expenses, gifts, tuition payments, lease agreements, every penny, every sacrifice, every traceable breadcrumb. Because when the time came to cut ties, I didn't want closure. I wanted documentation. Not to win in a court of law. I didn't care if this ever saw a judge's eyes. I wanted to win in silence. The kind of silence that cannot be undone. The kind that leaves a mark so clean they don't even realize they've been cut until they are already bleeding. That's what I wrote at the bottom of the page before I turned out the lamp. This time, I'm keeping the receipts. He used to be more present, my wife's sister said carefully, folding her napkin on her lap as if the accusation needed a polite wrapper. She's worried. We all are. It was a nice brunch spot. Clean glass walls, trendy bowls of overpriced fruit. My chair was empty, of course. I wasn't invited, but I heard about the conversation later from the hostess. She knew me. Her cousin did our landscaping. She told me they stayed for hours, drinking mimosas, peeling me back like a rotten orange, passing me around a table of women who decided, without evidence, that I was changing. She says he's been drinking more. My wife offered, letting it hang in the air just long enough for someone else to agree. Not a shred of proof. I don't even keep alcohol in the house. Never have. My father was a drunk. I swore I never would be. But logic doesn't matter when you're painting a man in shadow. Myra chimed in next. He gets edgy. He watches me when I walk by. He just stays. It didn't matter that I installed the hallway camera for her safety after her purse was stolen. It didn't matter that I was the one paying for the damn food they were eating while they dissected me like a cold case murder. He says she's scared. And that's all it takes, right? No bruises. No threats. Just a whisper that makes you a liability. But while they were building their neat little gossip house out of fiction and Chardonnay, I was sitting in the lobby of a notary, signing away pieces of the life we used to share. Nothing big. Not yet. Just the small, unsexy stuff. The backup vehicle transferred into a holding company LLC. The joint safety deposit box emptied, replaced with a notarized letter of ownership. Mine. The wedding ring insurance policy quietly cancelled. No notification sent. I didn't slam doors. I didn't give speeches. I just stopped being predictable. The next morning, I had a meeting at the bank. I'd scheduled it 3 weeks ago, before the accusation, before the motel. Just a routine financial review, they thought. I smiled, wore a gray jacket, shook hands. Mr. Franklin, today we'll be reviewing the joint savings account. I leaned forward. Actually, I'd like to restructure it. Separate it into a marital exempt trust. My name only. No transfers in or out without my direct authorization. The banker paused. That will revoke her access. Yes, I said. She wanted space. I'm giving it to her. I signed the papers neatly. I even made a joke about interest rates. The banker laughed. He had no idea he was witnessing a silent divorce, one signature at a time. Back at the motel, I updated my spreadsheet. Every line item labeled, joint, private, liquid, protected. Her favorite phrase used to be, what's mine is yours. She even had it on a pillow once, when she still sewed. Now, I had rewritten the phrase, what was shared is now divided. They thought I would sulk, that I would spiral. That's what makes whispers so dangerous. They are self-fulfilling prophecies. People don't check facts. They just squint long enough to convince themselves the blur is real. At a dinner party with her friend group, she casually mentioned that I'd stopped being affectionate, that I was retired and bitter, that she was worried about the kind of man he's turning into. No one asked if she was still cashing the pension check I earned. No one asked why she hadn't updated her resume in 12 years, why Myra was still living rent-free in the pool house. But I didn't defend myself. I let them talk. Because while they were building stories, I was building exits. One afternoon, I stood in the hallway of our house, our old house, while the new locksmith changed all the cylinders. He asked if I wanted to keep her code active. No, I said. Reset everything. New codes. New keycards. Facial recognition off. Got it. Also, I added, disable the voice commands. It knows my tone. He looked at me, confused. I didn't explain. I left a note in the drawer. One sentence. You said you wanted space. I gave her a palace. Only she didn't know it wasn't hers anymore. I could tell by the way she said hello that she thought she was about to win. Not apologize. Not explain. Have you had time to reflect? She asked, her voice calm, casual, as if this were just a little bump in an otherwise functional marriage. As if maybe I'd just needed a walk and now I was ready to come home and act grateful for the boot print on my back. I have, I said. Good, she replied, cheerful, because I have too. And I think if we both acknowledge that mistakes were made, I'm free this Thursday. I cut her off. Let's meet at 10 at the Mirror Cafe. She paused, just for a second. I imagined she expected more resistance. A plea, maybe. An apology. Definitely not punctuality. Definitely not a cafe. The Mirror Cafe was neutral ground. She loved their pecan cookies. Always said they reminded her of her grandmother's kitchen. I arrived 10 minutes early. I already had the table. I already had the envelope on my lap, neatly tucked under the corner of the menu. She walked in wearing a light gray jacket and that carefully neutral face women practice when they are trying to look composed but also morally superior. I'm not mad. I'm not hurt. I'm just disappointed in you, Alan. She slid into the booth. You look well. Thank you, I said. I didn't return the compliment. We made small talk for 2 minutes. She asked if I was still staying at that motel off the highway. She said the word motel like it was a disease. I nodded politely. She said her sister had been worried. I didn't respond. Then she leaned forward, both hands on her overpriced latte. I think if you were willing, we could talk about what moving forward would look like, as partners. I slid the manila envelope across the table. She looked at it, blinking. What is this? The pre-filed divorce papers. You don't have to do anything but sign. She stared. You're just ending it. Like that. I nodded. Just like that. No therapy. No, Alan, this was a conversation. We were fixing things. I didn't, I said. I said you fixed something. You fixed it so I was disposable. She shook her head. I never said that. You didn't have to. You just opened the door and stood aside while someone else pushed me out of my own house. She looked at the envelope like it was ticking. And just to be clear, I continued, I'm not contesting anything. You want the furniture. Fine. You want the wine glasses. Take them. This isn't about stuff. It's about math and boundaries. Her lips tightened. What does that mean? It means anything I wanted to keep, I've already moved. Anything I wanted to protect is already locked down. You don't have to worry about the negotiation. There won't be one. She didn't open the envelope there, just nodded slowly, trying to maintain her composure. I'll look this over. But Alan, this feels cold. I took a sip of my coffee. Well, you told your sister I'd been drinking. I figured I'd keep the temperature consistent. We didn't hug. We didn't say goodbye. She walked out in slow confusion, the envelope clutched in one hand, the latte in the other. She didn't know yet. Not really. Because Myra's name was written on the back flap of that envelope in black ink. She opened it an hour later, alone, sitting at the dining room table I'd built. Inside were the divorce papers, signed, witnessed, dated, and a second, smaller sealed envelope addressed to her daughter. I never heard her scream, but I imagine it was loud enough to startle the neighbors. The voicemail came just after noon. I was sitting outside the motel room, drinking gas station coffee, watching a construction crew across the street dig a trench for a sidewalk no one had asked for. The whine of jackhammers masked the beginning of the message, but it didn't matter. I recognized the voice instantly. Mom, pick up. He really did it. He really filed it. Everything I said. It's all on record now. They are investigating me. Click. No hello, Alan. No apology. No hesitation. Just full-blown panic. Volume at 11. I didn't even listen to the rest. I didn't need to. I knew exactly which part of the trap had just snapped shut. The complaint wasn't theatrical. It wasn't personal. It was structured, chronological, dry, even, but precise. Exhibit A. A forwarded email from her to a friend calling me emotionally dumb enough to fund her forever. Exhibit B. A screenshot of an old group chat she forgot I had access to, where she joked, "He's too scared of mom to ever stand up to me." I could say he looked at me funny and he would leave. Exhibit C. The voice memo. The one she recorded drunk at a party, mocking me. Alan is like a sad puppy with a pension. I swear I could fake a panic attack and he would hand over the deed to the house. All of it timestamped. All of it submitted. Not to a judge, but to far more devastating audiences. Feist, the University Ethics Committee. She was applying for a PhD fellowship. Her application included a sworn statement of moral integrity. Lying about familial abuse, falsely implicating a guardian for personal gain? That's a violation of Article 12.4 of the university's Code of Ethics. I didn't accuse. I just submitted evidence and let the language of their own bylaws do the heavy lifting. Second, the nonprofit. A shiny little program with a mission to empower young women to lead with empathy. She had a job offer pending with them. I sent a simple dossier. No editorializing. Just her own words, her own mocking laughter, her own duplicity in 12-point font, with audio backup. The hiring board didn't need more than that. Third, the trust fund. When she was 16, I set up a future planning trust in her name, $50,000. My lawyer was listed as the secondary contact. It had stipulations. No withdrawals without confirmation of her academic and employment standing. A safety net, not a piggy bank. Last week, I sent my lawyer an addendum along with a letter requesting a temporary freeze, pending a formal review of character eligibility under Clause 6C. That freeze went into effect the same morning as the voicemail. She tried to log in. Access denied. She tried to email the trustee. Auto-reply. Pending investigation. No action can be taken at this time. She tried to call me. I saw the phone vibrate twice. I let it ring until it died. I wasn't angry. I wasn't gloating. But there was a certain satisfaction, like setting a bone back into place. This wasn't about revenge. It was about record-keeping. She had turned my life into a kangaroo court, passing out accusations like canapes at a self-pity party and hoping no one noticed she never served a main course. I just gave her audience the receipts. And the best part, no confrontation. No counter-accusations. I didn't need to stand in front of anyone and plead for my name. I just let her words speak for themselves. I deleted the voicemail. Not out of cruelty, but because it had served its purpose. The first scream always does. She expected to find dust. Maybe some dead plants. Maybe a passive-aggressive note of mine she could show her sister and mock over a glass of wine. Look what he left. Can you believe it? She expected bitterness. Retaliation. The sad clinging of a man who still thought there was something left to save. What she found was absence. The door opened with her key, but only after a 2-second delay. The kind of delay that makes you realize the lock didn't recognize you at first. The kind of delay that says, "This place isn't waiting for you anymore." She walked in and immediately noticed the echo. The couch? Gone. Not all the furniture. Just the things that mattered to me. The leather armchair I inherited from my father. The oak desk from the study. The vintage radio I used to fix on weekends when I needed a silence that sounded like something. Legally mine. Moved quietly. No moving truck parked outside. No announcements. Just gone. The joint photos still on the wall, but only the frames. I removed the prints and left the glass. A rude ghost. A reminder. In the kitchen, the overhead lights flickered on. She saw the sticky note first, right in the center of the refrigerator door. Yellow. Neatly written. My handwriting. Space requested. Granted. Nothing else. No signature. No flourish. Just a final answer to the first move she made. She opened the refrigerator. Empty. Then the cupboards. Also empty. She walked through the dining room. No wine rack. No sideboard. The chairs were still there, but not the table. She picked up her phone to turn off the living room security camera, a routine she'd done for years. Access denied. She tried again. Device not recognized. Her Face ID rejected. She walked over to the hallway console. Tried to reset the system. It asked for master admin password. She entered the old one. Denied. She tried a second one. Still denied. She stood in the center of the home we built and realized she no longer had control over a single square inch of it. Not legally. Not digitally. Not emotionally. She called her sister. Went straight to voicemail. She called again. This time it rang once before connecting. "I think I made a mistake," she said. Silence on the other end. Then a cautious, "What kind of mistake?" I think he's really done with me. With everything." The sister asked something she didn't answer. Something about the papers. About what she had signed. Exactly. About why Alan, the man they all mocked for being too quiet, too soft, too cowardly, was suddenly not answering his phone. She went back to the kitchen. Opened the pantry. Nothing. Not even a can of beans. Just a single sealed envelope on the top shelf with her name written on the front. Inside, a printed receipt from a moving company, paid in full. An inventory list of every item removed. each categorized as separate property under state code, cross-referenced with a pre-existing property agreement she signed 8 years ago without reading it, when she was recovering from gallbladder surgery and handed me power of attorney with a laugh. Don't go buying a boat or anything. No boats, just freedom. In the back corner of the garage, she noticed something else was missing. Something she didn't even know she valued until that moment. The pegboard where I hung every tool I owned. The empty hooks looked like punctuation marks. Full stops. She stood in that silent house and realized I wasn't gone. I had moved. Intentionally. Legally. Without a single raised voice or broken glass. She thought I was sulking. But I wasn't. I was closing doors. They chose a neutral law firm downtown. One of those overly sterile places with leather chairs no one sinks into. An abstract art meant to impress people who haven't felt anything real in a decade. She arrived in a navy blue blazer, hair pulled back in a tight bun, like a noose, flanked by her lawyer, a man in his mid-30s who looked like he still practiced cross-examinations in the mirror. I was already seated. Calm. Hands folded. No tie. The only paper in front of me was a single manila folder, the same size and color as the one I'd handed her at the cafe. The symmetry was deliberate. Introductions were brief. Her lawyer opened his leather-bound portfolio and cleared his throat with the confidence of a man who believed he was walking into a clean-up job, not a demolition. Mr. Franklin, he began, we are here today in good faith to review the expectations of alimony, your pension plan, and the joint property assets, including real estate and retirement benefits. My client is prepared to negotiate a fair distribution. Carla, my lawyer, a woman with wire-framed glasses and an expression that permanently hovered between amused and lethal, opened her folder, slid it across the table without a word, and waited. Her lawyer skimmed the first few pages, slowed, flipped back, scanned again, then stopped. He looked at my wife and asked, You have already signed this. What? She said, narrowing her eyes. He turned the folder toward her and pointed to a line. Property reallocation complete. Pension rollover finalized. Protected status. She blinked, then looked up. No, I haven't. I've never signed that. I cleared my throat softly. It wasn't necessary. Silence. She turned to me. What do you mean it wasn't necessary? I kept my voice even, measured. Remember the gallbladder surgery 2 years ago? You were worried about being under anesthesia for a while. You said something about not wanting to deal with paperwork when you got home. So you gave me a temporary power of attorney. That was 2 years ago, she said, her voice rising. Temporary. I nodded. It was. Except you never revoked it, which makes it still active, durable by default, unless formally rescinded, which you never did. Her lawyer opened his mouth, closed it, checked his notes, then muttered, his technically. Right. Technically, she hissed. Carla spoke then, at last. Concise, precise. All filings were made in accordance with the powers granted. Every action was dated, notarized, and filed with the appropriate disclosures. Nothing was hidden. You just weren't looking. Her breathing quickened. You moved the pension. It's in a protected rollover, I said. Your name is no longer on it. Legally, it hasn't been for weeks. The house is already divided. You get the foundation. I got everything on top of it. Alimony does not apply. The trust fund you're living off of is still active. Out of my courtesy. That's generosity, not obligation. She stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor, but her lawyer didn't move. He just stared at the folder like it was a patient with a flatlining EKG. You can't do this, she snapped. You can't just rewire our life without. You asked me to leave, I said, still seated. You said you needed space. So I gave you more than space. I gave you distance. You didn't ask what came with it. Her lawyer gently touched her wrist, trying to get her to sit back down. I slid one last sheet across the table. This is a revocation form. If you want to terminate the power of attorney, go ahead, sign it. It won't change anything that has already been filed, but it will make you feel better. She stared at the paper, her eyes on fire, but she didn't sign it. Not because she didn't want to, but because she finally understood. She had handed me the keys, and I hadn't changed the locks out of spite. I had done it with her signature, her authority, her blessing. The room went still. I stood up, buttoned my jacket. We are done here, I said with the quiet finality of a man who had nothing left to negotiate. She sank back into her chair, not broken, not angry, just stunned, because she thought I was reacting emotionally, but I had been planning surgically, and the incision was already closed. It started with the email. Myra opened it in the middle of a group chat with 4 of her friends, planning a weekend trip to Charleston. The subject line read, Offer status update. She smiled at first, thinking it was a formal confirmation. Then she read the body. Due to unresolved ethical concerns arising from recently submitted third-party documentation, we are unable to move forward with your onboarding at this time. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. She blinked. Read it again. Her pulse hammering. There was no phone number, no explanation, just a wall of legalese and a dead link. She called them. Straight to voicemail. She called again. Blocked. Within an hour, her work-associated email account with the nonprofit was suspended. Locked out. The application portal, gone. Next was the internship, the one she bragged about endlessly. A competitive spot at a policy think tank that handed out positions like candy to the connected and crucified the rest for grammatical errors. She'd posted about it 5 times on Instagram. My future starts here. Grateful to join a team that fights for what's right. They sent her a letter, not an email. Typed. Sealed. Old school. Brutal. Your internship at the Institute for Ethical Futures has been revoked effective immediately, pending an internal review of integrity concerns submitted by verified third party. We reserve the right to contact you if any clarification is required. But at this time, your access has been removed from all platforms. There was no clarification. Just removal. She called her mother. No answer. So, she did something reckless and stormed my office building. Not the house. The office. The receptionist tried to smile. Tried to help. Hi, can I help you? Where's he? Myra asked, trembling. Alan Franklin. I need to talk to him now. I'm sorry. I know he's here. You people think you're so. Security arrived in seconds. They didn't touch her. They didn't yell. They just positioned themselves quietly between her and the elevators. You'll need to wait outside. We've been asked not to allow any disruptions. She pulled out her phone. Dialed me. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. She screamed at the receptionist. She called her useless. She called them all cowards. Then she turned, marched to the glass exit, and kicked it on her way out, the heel of her shoe striking against the doorframe. Outside, no one followed her. No one looked at her. She stood on the steps, humiliated, heart racing, not sure whether to scream or cry. And then her phone buzzed. A text from her ex-boyfriend. One line, you told me he was a creep. Now your name is on a compliance report. The phone fell out of her hand. Not by accident. It just slid from her grip, as if her body couldn't decide what to hold on to anymore. She drove home in silence. No music, just the hum of tires and a growing understanding. By the time she got to the front door, her hands were shaking. She didn't greet her mother, didn't ask what happened at the lawyer's office. She walked straight past her into her childhood bedroom and locked the door. She opened her laptop, tried to log into her school portal. Access restricted. She opened her social media accounts. The direct messages were already flooding in. Is this true? You're the girl who lied about her stepdad. You should be ashamed. Because of you, real victims aren't believed. She closed the laptop, rolled onto her side, and curled up like a child, waiting for the world to disappear. But it didn't. And for the first time in her life, no one was coming to fix it. Not her mother. Not her friends. Not the man she accused. Especially not him. I didn't email. I didn't text. I didn't call to check in. There was no grand finale. No confrontation scene with tears and regret. Just a quiet manila envelope with 2 sealed letters inside. One marked Catherine, the other Myra, and a tracking number. I dropped it at the post office, wearing a windbreaker and a baseball cap, nodded politely at the clerk, and then walked out into a cool October morning as if I were just mailing bills. I didn't wait for the letters to arrive. I went straight to the post office box, the one I'd opened during my second week at the motel, when the air still smelled like drywall and betrayal, and turned the key one last time. Inside there was nothing. Good. I left the key in the lock and walked away. I never looked back. Catherine found her letter 2 days later. It arrived on a Saturday morning along with some junk mail and a late insurance statement. She opened it at the kitchen table, still in her robe, expecting a plea, a half apology with room for negotiation, a confession that I had overreacted and still wanted her back. What she got was worse, because it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't angry. It was finished. No anger. No revenge. Just boundaries. You asked me to leave. So I did. Permanently. That was all. No signature. No return address. Just my handwriting. Steady. Clear. Emotionless. It was the kind of letter you frame if you're proud. Or, if you're ashamed, and know you deserve every word, you keep it in a drawer. She read it 3 times, then put it down without touching her coffee. Myra's letter came in the same envelope, but she didn't open it right away. She stared at her name on the front for 20 minutes. Her mother didn't push her, didn't ask what it said, just slid it across the table and left the room. Finally, Myra opened it with trembling fingers. A single line typed in black ink on plain white paper. I hope you someday understand what truth costs when it is used as a weapon. There was no Dear Myra, or sign-off. Just a verdict. She folded it slowly, carefully, as if it might break if it were bent the wrong way. Upstairs, she stared at the laptop she hadn't touched in 3 days. The inbox was still full. Some of the messages were cruel. Others were worse. They were compassionate. You made a mistake. You will grow from this. We all mess up. They weren't wrong. But that wasn't the part that made her sick. It was that Alan hadn't responded to anything. Not a call. Not a text. Not a scream. He just disappeared. But not like someone running away. Like someone closing the door. No noise. No mess. Just silence, locked from the other side. That afternoon, she turned off her last remaining phone, the one she kept for emergencies. She called the number transfer line, had them cancel the account, ported nothing, blocked everything, logged out of all shared platforms, deleted every password recovery email they could have used, even closed the backup account only his accountant knew about. Then, at 6:30 in the evening, he did one last thing. He took a pen, wrote his name in the top corner of a clean sheet of paper, and drew a horizontal line through it. One smooth motion. A perfect cut. It meant nothing to anyone else. But to him, it was the signature of freedom. The last sound Catherine ever heard from Alan was the mailbox closing, and it didn't echo. Myra sat in front of her laptop for a full minute before she clicked open the email. Her hands hovered, cold with sweat. This was her last shot. A competitive research fellowship through a think tank desperate to show its commitment to second chances. A quiet contact had put in a good word for her. She had rewritten her entire proposal, polished every line of her bio, scrubbed anything remotely connected to the scandal. It was supposed to be clean. The subject was simply status notification Q1 fellowship cycle. She clicked, her jaw clicked, and there it was. Thank you for your application to the ReFuture Fellowship Program. Unfortunately, we are unable to approve your candidacy at this time. This decision was made following a thorough background and ethics review, which revealed inconsistencies and concerns related to previous submissions. Due to unresolved ethical concerns from prior application materials, we are unable to consider you for future fellowship cycles. We wish you all the best. Not a call, not a meeting, not an explanation beyond that one damning line. Unresolved ethical concerns. 6 syllables that sounded almost clinical, until you realized they translated to permanently untrustworthy. She didn't scream this time, didn't call anyone, just stared at the screen as her future dried up like a puddle under a locked door. Downstairs, her mother sat at the kitchen table, staring at her own envelope. It had come in the plain mail, no return address. Inside, a court-certified document, final divorce decree, and a single yellow sticky note taped crookedly to the last page. Please forward to Alan's attorney. She frowned in confusion, then started to read. The assets had been divided. She knew that. She had signed the agreement after weeks of legal wrangling, hoping there would be something left once the smoke cleared. A car, a portion of the savings, maybe access to the cabin in Maine. Instead, she read a clause she hadn't noticed before, buried in the middle of the filing, titled, Marital Asset Redistribution, Beneficiary Reassignment. And below it, the words, all remaining marital assets, including but not limited to unclaimed joint property, savings, investment accounts, and non-separately titled real estate shall be redirected into an irrevocable trust for the benefit of Mr. Franklin's niece, Julia Rowe. Said trust shall be managed by third-party fiduciary services with no access granted to the former spouse or her dependent. This clause is non-contestable. She read it over and over. Then she dropped the pages on the table as if they had burned her fingers. It wasn't just about the money. It was about what it meant. That even the parts he hadn't touched, the things she assumed might still passively benefit her, had been sealed with no loopholes, no appeals. He hadn't left her destitute. He had left her irrelevant. Across the room, the family photo was still on the bookshelf. Myra was 8 in that picture. Alan had a hand on her shoulder, smiling like he believed in something. Now, years later, he was gone. Not just absent. Erased. A ghost with bank statements and bulletproof signatures. She wanted to rip it all up. The letter. The decree. The damn sticky note. But she didn't. She just sat there, staring. Upstairs, Myra's bedroom door remained closed, silent. No typing. No angry music. No phone calls. Just the faint glow of a laptop screen that no longer held a future. There were no goodbyes. No final conversations. No last-minute redemption arcs. Just one undeniable truth. The man they cast out had not just left. He had taken the floor with him. So, I'm curious. If you found yourself in my shoes, betrayed and unfairly accused, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments below.